One second. Hit it.
Okay, good morning. We called you, my name is Jesse Sharkey. I'm the Vice President of the Chicago Teachers Union. Karen's not available today. We called you here today because there's a lot of talk out there about why we're gathering with thousands of our members at the Auditorium Theater tomorrow. And we want to talk about that. Before I do that, though, I want to introduce some of the members of the Chicago Teachers Union we have up here with us, who are going to say a few remarks. We have Maria Paz, who's a second grade teacher at Stowe Elementary. We have Lourdes Guerrero, who's a displaced art teacher, formerly from Von Steuben High School. We have Jay Rehack, who teaches English at Whitney Young High School. And we have Howard Heath, who's a retiree with 34 years of experience, who taught at Lane Tech High School and is a member of the Chicago Teachers Union's class size committee. So I want to begin by clearing something up, which is that we are not meeting tomorrow to take a strike authorization vote. I know there's been some talk of that. But we are meeting tomorrow to try to show the breadth and depth of the sentiment inside of our membership, which says that the mayor of the city of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, and his appointed Board of Education are taking public education policy in the city in the wrong direction. In particular, for example, there's been talk about a longer school day, despite the fact that there is no funding for a longer day. We have more recently, the board announced an 85% cut in capital spending. And that happens at the same time that we have schools without playgrounds. That we have schools which are scheduled to meet this summer for classes with no air conditioning. That we have 160 schools without libraries. And so we feel there's an insufficient plan for that. And yet somehow we do have the money, in the most recent announcement, to be opening 60 new charter schools. And so politically, our schools are heading in the wrong direction. But more specifically, and specifically to the negotiations which are going on with the board, there are four proposals in particular, or four areas of proposals, which we'd like to draw some attention to, because they're both bad for educators and for public education. They're bad for public school teachers, and they're bad for public school students. And I'd like to highlight four of those. And the four proposals that are the worst we feel for our schools are the board's proposals on class size, in particular to remove the class size limits, the board's proposals which ignore a rich curriculum for the longer school day, the board's proposals which ignore fair compensation for educators, and the lack of dignity and job security for experienced educators that are on the table. All of the board's proposals frankly move in the wrong direction in these areas, and I would like to actually ask some of our members to come up and speak with in a little bit more detail about the things which they know much more intimately than frankly the politicians who are steering this debate. To talk about class size first, I have Maria Paz from Stowe Elementary.
You see me here. Well, class size is important in order to provide your children with quality education. When I have too many students in my classroom, I'm not able to provide them with the quality education and also to give them the attention they deserve. Second grades need to learn reading comprehension, writing, and math skills. It takes me 25 to 30 hours to prepare my classes. And in order for me to give them what they deserve. That's what it takes me. Besides, every day I leave my school 2 hours after my students leave, and whatever I can do there, I take it home to do so. So we need really a class size of 18 to 22 students will allow me as a teacher, or allow all of us teachers to provide the quality education the children of Chicago deserve.
What's your size now?
30 students.
We'll hold the question till the end. Continue, please.
Next we have Howard Heath, who's a CTU retiree, who's going to speak a little bit about his experience.
Hi, my name's Howard Heath, and I'm a former teacher. I'm retired from Lane Tech High School. As a retiree, we are really disappointed that the mayor's talking about eliminating our 3% COLA in order to keep class size lower. I was asked here because in addition to being a retiree, I'm also a member of the class size committee. And I've been out at numerous schools all during the year trying to alleviate some of the problems, trying to work out solutions, using non-monetary solutions to overcrowded classrooms. We've done a number of things. I've seen my members, the active members, work diligently, and though they were in some very untenable situations. And I'd like to suggest to the mayor that the way he's formed the land trust, that he also work on a student trust in the same way and generate funds to keep class sizes lower in the schools. Thank you.
Clearly at the heart of what's going to happen next year is the longer day, and we hope for a rich curriculum that goes along with more school, so the school is not characterized by dull drill and test prep. And to talk about that a little bit is Lourdes Guerrero.
I'm Lourdes Guerrero. I taught for 8 years at Von Steuben until 2008 when I was displaced. But I grew up here in Chicago. I was one of those troubled youth that you constantly read about. I was constantly being called into the office. I was always in fights. My parents were always there for me, but nothing happened until I had art. When I had art in 7th grade for the first time, it changed my life. I knew that there was a purpose in my life. I began to see a relationship between art and math and science and literature. It became so important that I knew that I needed to be an artist and an art teacher. And I became a teacher, Chicago Public School teacher in 2002, when I saw that my own children, that they had very little art. Sometimes one art teacher or a half-time art teacher, a half-time music teacher, no language in elementary school. And I knew that that had to change, and I wanted to be part of that change. I taught for 8 years, but in 2010, when the budget cuts came in, the first job they cut were the arts, and that was me. And I look now at all the children around me and the children that I used to teach. I'm creative. I can survive. I will make a living outside of CPS. Currently, I've been teaching at School of the Art Institute. I teach art teachers. And I'm devastated by the lack of arts and music and world languages to the public schools. When we talk about ourselves as a world city, how can we not provide languages for our children in elementary school and have them have a good base before they get into high school? So I really propose to the mayor that we really begin to add these full-time art, music, theater, creative writing, world languages classes into the public schools in every building, full-time. Thank you.
Can you spell your name, please?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. First name is Lourdes, Lourdes. Last name Guerrero, Guerrero.
Obviously, next year is going to be a hard year for people who work in the schools, and to talk about fair compensation for educators is Jay Rehack from Whitney Young.
Hi, Jay Rehack, Whitney Young High School. I've been part of the Chicago public school system for 22 years. And I've worked with the best and the brightest. I've worked on the west side of Chicago prior to working at Whitney Young High School. I want to talk to you today about fair compensation. I want to talk to you about the idea that, the notion that somehow a 2% raise over 5 years, 2% the first year and 4 years of nothing, along with 15% more of a work day, even though you should know that according to the University of Illinois study, teachers work 58 hours a week. Now, I don't know how many hours each one of us works, but I can tell you that I work long after the bell rings. I work before the school starts. But the notion, anyway, that somehow 2% for the first year and 0% for the next 4 years after that, and instead I'm going to be giving 15% more of my time, and my colleagues, the thousands of members of this union are going to work 15% more of their time, is an insult. And I also feel it shows a lack of understanding that basically what teachers work for, more than anything else, is dignity and respect. And I feel that we are being disrespected right now, and I don't understand why that's the case. We'll say that additionally, beyond even the 15% longer workday, we're also going to be implementing a core curriculum next year. You may be familiar with this. There's also a new teacher evaluation system. And I just want to mention, I'm kind of going a little bit off subject here, but the teacher evaluation system, people have to understand that people like myself at Whitney Young, where we have wonderful students, wonderful parents, people who are highly engaged, I have no problems with discipline, etc. For me, it's a slam dunk, oh, that's easy, teacher evaluation, but it's just not fair to people. And we have to start looking at what we're doing to people on an individual basis, how we are trying to undermine them, I would say, their dignity and their respect. So I want to make sure that we walk out here understanding the unfairness of the current situation. Yeah, my name is Rehak, R like remember, E-H-A-K. My first name is J, J-A-Y.
Dignity for educators and job security at the heart of what we care about. The current contract that governs the conditions in CPS schools is no work of art around this subject. For example, if a teacher loses their job because of a drop in enrollment, or the educational mission or an education program is phased out, which happens all the time at CPS, those teachers get 10 months to find new work. Many of them never do, especially if they're veteran educators, and they're more expensive to hire than someone who's new off the street. However, but instead of trying to fix that and make it actually provide security for people who are well-rated and never had a job evaluation in their life, the CPS's new proposal is to eliminate those securities entirely. And again, it's something which we find unacceptable. I know that public polling, to conclude, public polling shows that the Chicago Public School parents and the public in general support educators 2-to-1 over the mayor in terms of what kind of solutions will work for public schools. As you guys may know, we've conducted our own contract poll. Votes were held in over 95% of our schools. 615 work sites, we held votes in about 600 of those sites. And over 21,000 of our members voted to reject the board's contract proposals. Okay? On tomorrow, what you will see are thousands of Chicago Teachers Union members saying that they stand for respect, they stand for dignity, and more than anything else, they stand for a public education system that educates both students and provides dignity and respect for people who work in it. And those two things are not separable. They're one and the same, and we want the city of Chicago and the political leadership of Chicago in particular to hear our message loud and clear in that. Thank you. And I'll take any questions.
Talk about what the school system, of course, is saying that you're misleading us and that there is not any effort to change class size. Why is there this disconnect of no agreement on that issue?
Sure. The school board might not be going around saying that they're going to increase class size, but there are contract provisions which set class sizes. And the board is saying they want to remove those provisions.
Specifically, what is the contract now saying? What is the proposal?
Specifically, the contract now says that in elementary school, class size limits are 28. In high school, class size limits are 28. There are some classes that have limits of 25, so for example, remedial English or whatnot. And the board is saying that it does not think that those numbers and limits at all belong in the collective bargaining agreement, and is proposing to remove them.
But the limits are only advisory, so they are not mandated.
So we're proposing
so
to make,
why
right.
keep
So
them if they're advisory?
well, they've been in our contract since 1967. And although it's true the limits are advisory, we'd like to make them enforceable. The board wants to remove them entirely.
Now, on pay, they think you're well paid, and they think it's reasonable to give you the 2%, and 0 is fine because you're already well paid for the next 4 years. What do you think of that?
I think that the school year next year is going to be extremely hard. It's going to be hard because there's going to be a new core curriculum. There's going to be a new assessment system. For members out there, we're looking at the prospect of having to have our evaluations based on our students' standardized test scores. And I don't, you know, many students are uptight about standardized test scores, so the teachers then are that much more nervous about how that's going to work. And we're already in a situation where members are working 60-hour weeks. I'm sorry, 58.3 is it in the U of I study, I believe is the number. And it's not clear to me how it's fair to ask us to work. It's about 20% more instructional time, and not have there be any increased compensation to go along with all those difficulties that we face next year.
What is the average teacher pay now?
What is the average teacher paid? I actually don't know the answer. $69,000 a year, I believe. I don't know. I don't have that exact number off the top of my head.
You know, the question too, though, is that this 0% that you're throwing out. What CPS says is that they're not offering you 0%. That they want to put a committee together because they want to shift the compensation system. So they're not saying 0. They're saying we want to come up with a new system, and that committee will negotiate.
So right. So to be clear, CPS is actually talking about essentially a reopen or negotiating again what compensation is going to be like in years 3, 4, and 5. And what they want to have is what we call merit pay, what they call differentiated compensation. And the proposal for differentiated compensation is that math teachers come to be paid more than art teachers. And when we go back and we look at the submission that Chicago Public Schools made for the Teacher Incentive Fund, which is a fund, it's about differentiated compensation, what they said is that this kind of a plan should be revenue neutral. That is, you put no extra money into the teaching profession, and you're able to create raises for some by denying raises for others. And in particular, they're saying, well, maybe this will have something to do with standardized tests, which we're very distrustful of, because frankly, standardized test scores of our students are often out of our individual control as teachers. Or making a differentiation where elementary school teachers are paid less than high school teachers, or science, technology, engineering, and math teachers are paid more than art teachers or people who teach poetry. And frankly, it's a direction that we think is anathema to the idea of a rounded public education system.
Aren't some teachers worth more than others?
Aren't certain teachers worth more than others? Yeah. Are you saying that certain students are worth more than others?
I'm not saying anything.
No, I mean, I guess our feeling is that teachers who work to educate students, frankly, provide value. And should there be an evaluation system for teachers? Yes, in fact, there will be. And frankly, that's one of the things that's going to make next year hard. It's going to be a new system.
Has CPS actually proposed paying high school teachers more than elementary?
CPS has said that that teachers in areas like math should make more than teachers in areas like art.
Where have they said that? Did they give you a document? I mean, where is this just verbal, or where are these students?
I'm sorry. Well, there's two things. One, there's been discussions about what differentiated compensation would look like, and number two, there actually is a document. It's the Chicago Public Schools grant application for the Teacher Incentive Fund federal money, which was made in 2010, just before we came to office, and that's a public document.
But they want to pay art more, math more, not because it's math, but because it's a high need area. There's a shortage of math teachers, right? So in order to attract math teachers, they want to pay more teachers more.
I'm
Isn't
sorry.
that
I
their
know that
strategy?
it sounds personal for me to talk about, yes, art teachers should be paid as much as math teachers. But I think there's a complete misunderstanding of what teachers do. You're thinking that we're making a product, that we're putting little widgets into children's brains, and that the widgets from math and science are much bigger and than the widgets from elementary school or high school. But children are people. They're not like that. We teach together. We are a consortium of people who work together. And it's when we work together without competition that children are educated in a better way. Elementary school teachers spend so much time with children. They need to spend time with children. You can't shove 50 kids in an elementary school classroom and expect them to be educated because you're not sticking widgets in their head. And so when you start thinking that a math teacher or a science teacher we're sticking widgets in people's heads, you're not looking at what education
What,
is.
what's wrong with paying someone more because they have a skill that's highly needed and in demand and not readily available?
And I would disagree with that. I would say that art teachers bring in a sense of interdisciplinary teaching that the other classes do not do. So why am I not compensated more? Because I have a background in science, I have done writing, I incorporate literature and history in my classes. Why am I not compensated more than a math teacher? Because it's called art, but I teach in an interdisciplinary way. And when I would develop my curriculum, I would tap all those things, not just math, not just science. I would incorporate all those things. So I would say I should get paid more.
Jesse, can you give us a sense of, if you're not going to vote tomorrow, when are you going to vote? And isn't the mayor trying to change the voting? There's something going on in Springfield. Could you explain what that is?
We're gonna make a strike authorization vote when it's appropriate. You know, if the board would stop making unfair demands, it wouldn't be an issue, frankly. Does anyone else want to say anything about that?
But isn't the mayor, could you address what he's trying to change in Springfield? Isn't he trying to tweak the bill?
I haven't heard any confirmation of that. That will be extremely serious in our eyes.
Do you anticipate, though, a vote before the end of this school year?
Look, if there's talk about going back to Springfield and changing a set of rules that frankly we've been bargaining over, you know, or bargaining under since November, that we would take that as being an extremely serious breach of trust, both on the part of the legislature, if they would consider it, and frankly from the mayor's office. I mean, if that's true, we're in a situation where there's been a public discussion about what makes schools go forward in the city. And the part of the reason it's been so public is because the mayor has been very outspoken on these issues. The latest polling comes out that shows that by a 2-to-1 margin, the mayor has failed to convince either the teachers in the city or frankly the parents and the public in this city that his proposals are what's best for students. And so this is now a situation where failing to persuade us, he now goes to Springfield in order to force us. That would be really a problem, and I hope that doesn't happen.
Jesse, in your advisory for this press conference, you talked about, you said the mayor is threatening to have 55 kids in classrooms. What's your proof of that?
Well, he went to Springfield and said it.